Feeling lost is a very generalistic thing that occurs with everyone, and it can happen at any point of time. You're normally dealing with things, and suddenly you feel that whatever I was doing isn't really working for me. I want to do something else, and maybe I don't know what I want to do. I do not know what my interests are, and you literally feel lost. This can be sorted out with time. You can take time and learn new things, and either you will settle for the easier way or you just pursue what you want and find a way to do what you want. But there's an even easier way to do it. Reading. Reading is very important and should be a very essential part of anyone. Some people do find reading to be a very boring task. You can listen. There are many ways. Reading books, reading stories, reading self-help books. If you do not like reading, you can watch YouTube videos. We do have a lot of TED Talks that give a lot of perspective on what other people think. Books are generally a writer's perspective on how things work and what they reckon of what they have seen and how their mind works. Now, every human being has a very different mindset. They think differently. Even similar people, they think differently. Their thoughts are different, and it's very variable. It depends on so many things how people think. Everyone's thoughts basically come in from their mind, their environment, the kind of people they come across, the age they bring in, the situations that have occurred in their lives, and the choices they have made. Everybody makes very different choices, and those choices result us into thinking how our brain processes information and how we react to situations. And that is what comes out in the suggestions that we give out to people. It's very variable. So comparing and saying someone's less, someone's more, someone knows more, someone knows less is not like that. Yes, exposure plays a very big role. Sometimes some people are exposed to a lot of situations that are not uh, conventionally organized for everyone. It doesn't happen with everyone. So conventionally having stupid or different and interesting situations can have a lot of impact on the way a person thinks. It's very important. It's very, very variable. For example, I might face situation A, react to A differently, and then make a conclusion differently. Now, these things depend on what my upbringing is, where I come from, the environment, the kind of good and bad people I've come across. So, my decision making is dependent on all these things. But it does so happen that whatever you bring in from your past, as in your upbringing, what you've been taught by your peers, your parents, your teachers, it does tend to change. You might come across with something that's totally very different from what you perceived it to be. So perceptions do change, everything changes, and so do people. But what I feel is whenever you feel lost and you do not want to, or have an idea of what to do, where am I, what am I doing with my life, what do you think I should do, seeking advice from people might help, but it's their perception and their way of looking at things. It's very important to understand that the perception of a person comes in from so many variables that we've talked earlier about. Now, asking other people for an advice would be great, but just because you keep a person differently, taking a positive advice and keeping it in a positive, higher space is not a great idea, because it's their experience, the relationship they share with you. So, there are biases that are there, even though we do not want them to be. Thus, what I feel is reading is a very good idea. Why? Even though it's like an advice from someone else, because every book, no matter what it is the writer's perspective of looking at things. Imagine everybody writing the same book, the same story, it will be different. Let's take an example of a story of two people that are there in front of us. If there are 10 viewers, all the 10 will write the story in a different way. So if A and B are fighting, someone will think A is right, someone will think B is right, someone will think A reacted in a certain way because of B reacted because of something else. So everybody will give you a different perspective of looking at things. It'll be very different for everybody. Now, because it's very different, so we see it's a variable perspective. It's everyone's singular perspective of how we look at things. That is why we never take the same decisions, we never make the same moves. Thus, what I say is why reading or listening is a good idea is because once you get engrossed in something, putting your attention in, listening to the other person is fine, but you have your brain stimulated enough to tell you, okay, I being in that situation would have done this, I think it's this, it's that. Maybe you agree with the writer, you might not agree with the writer, but you certainly tend to tune into yourself as a person with an individuality which generally tends to be hampered when we discuss things with people or those who have a larger influence on us. So once we sit down, it's like meditating. Once you sit down with yourself, you're reading something or listening to something very singular focused, with a very singular focused, you tend to find out what you inside as a person are. Knowing yourself as a person is the most important gift that you can give yourself. You are the most important person in your life, and thus you need to be focused on how you can grow that person to understanding what we want in general for ourselves. So once we read, we tend to see what the other person is saying, but we do tune into ourselves to get an idea of where we are coming from, what we want to do, and how we want to do it. We might know a little more about ourselves, thus giving us a better decision making deal. It might sound very vague, but yes, it's still worth it. So thus I suggest whenever you feel lost out of nowhere, start reading. Actually just read. Reading something on the other will give you a tune of what you are as a person and what you want from life and what you don't want from life and how things will differ and how your decision making will differ. The feeling of being lost and I do not know what to do tend to vanish because you'll have a clearer mind of who you are. Thus I say, whenever you feel lost and in the middle of nowhere, read. Not to get influenced or see what other people think, but to get an idea from within of your subconscious, knowing what you want and who you really are.